I went over these floats yesterday between rain showers and figured out what I needed on there, what needed to be replaced. And then I went through my supply and figured out what I already had here, and then put together an order, placed the order with aircraft spruce for the hardware that I need. It poured down rain last night and most of the morning. Once the rain quit, I came out with some PB Blaster and sprayed all of the fittings and stuff on both these sets of float. Kind of let them soak a little bit to hopefully help get them loosened up. Now this set here was all put together with peralkatone, and that stuff's dried in there. It's kind of stiff. The other set is pretty clean, but it's pretty rusty. Now this is the original floats that I got with my Cub when I bought it. This is an old set of 89 2000. This is set up with Cub rigging, all the struts and attach fittings and everything for a Super Cub. The other set of float is 89 2000s, but they're set up with Cessna 172 rigging. And there's a significant difference between the struts and the attach fittings and everything between the 172 and the Super Cub. So I got to take all of the rigging, the struts and the flying wires and everything off from this set of floats. And then I have to go over those, clean them up, check them out, see how badly damaged they are, what needs to be replaced, and get those ready to put on the other set of floats. And then I have to take all of the 172 attached stuff off of the other set of floats. But I'm also going to take the spreader bars. Now the spreader bars, the floats are identical and the spreader bars are identical, and the diagonal wires between the spreader bars are the same. All the dimensions on that, on the floats themselves, are the same. It's just the attach gear, everything from the floats up, that has to be changed over from one set of floats to the other. So I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, strip this set of floats down of all the parts that go on the Cub. And then I'm going to strip the other set of floats down of all the stuff that goes with the 172. But I'm going to go ahead and take them off the spreader bars so I can tip the floats upside down and work on them easier. I know there's a couple of scabby looking patches on the bottom of those floats there, at least one that's that we tipped them up when I looked at them, and I thought that was a pretty hokey looking repair that somebody did on them. I want to do that right and check the rest of them out. They need to wash them out on the inside and put some sealant on the inside of them and stuff. So there's quite a bit of work to do on the other set of floats to get them ready. So I'm going to strip this set of floats down, and then I'll move them out of the way. Got the struts off and the attach fittings. I've still got the ones on the front flying wires. They have blocks on the front flying wires to attach to the fuselage. The rear ones, again, attached to a fitting that's welded right to the fuselage now. It was on a clamp-on attachment. That actually went pretty well. All that hardware was actually in pretty good shape. A couple of pieces were a little rusty, but most of it was all in real good shape. I could actually reuse the bolts and stuff on it. Well, I got to take the wire pulls off, the flying wires off yet. I have the diagonal braces that go to the fuselage, and I think I'm going to go ahead and take those spreader bars off and everything and just go ahead and disassemble those floats. They're a lot easier to handle individually than they are together, although together you only have to handle them once instead of twice. But I picked up most of the hardware and took it in the hangar and dumped it in a bucket of solvent so that it can get washed off and I can check and see how it is. I've got all of the other parts labeled, but those labels are going to have to come off when they get in the solvent to get them cleaned up and stuff too. I'll just have to do those one at a time instead of dumping them all in at one time. I got the spreader bars off and the water rudders off. So the only things left to come off of there now are some of the water rudder pulleys, and I got to figure out what I'm going to do with those hatches, those hatch covers. I want to put those on the new floats too. Everything came apart really good. I was really surprised that those spreader bars came apart as easy as they did. Those bolts just pushed out by the fingers. I'd put a lot of peralkatone on everything, and the only ones that had any rust on them at all, there's a bolt that goes down through the top of that plug, that casting that comes out of those spreader bars where it attaches to the float, and that holds those diagonal flying wires on, the flying wires, the braces for the fuselage, onto the floats. And that goes vertically down through that casting, and the nut on those is covered by those side plates there that hold everything together. And that was the only thing that had any rust on it at all, was that those two nuts down there at the bottom of those spreader bars. So I pushed everything out with my fingers Oh, that was really good. That hardware is still usable. There's nothing wrong with it at all, except for those two, well, probably 4 bolts. I haven't looked at the ones on the bottom of the rear spreader bar yet, but that's pretty good. Got these floats pretty much disassembled now. And I tipped them over on their tops. Well, they are all disassembled now, except for maybe the bow bumpers and these brackets here on the back for the water rudders. This is what I saw that made me decide I needed a new set of floats and that these weren't worth working on or repairing. This is the keel here on the aft portion is all caved in back here, but this is all gone, all rotted. There's a good probability it's into the skin down there. It's hard to say, but you can see over here on the chine, it's rotten here. The skin is rotten there, and it's blistering up the chine, so that's underneath that. And it's over here on this side. It's actually delaminated here in a few spots. It's all along on this aft portion. And here's a portion here that's pretty bad. Now the skeg here is kind of worn. I do have a new skeg I could put on there, but that's not too bad there. I mean, that's not anything I'd worry too much about. But you look at the skin right here on the step, and that's pretty rotten there. And this chine area here is all got corrosion on it. Here's another spot where it's blistered up pretty bad. That other side is not quite as bad, but it ain't very pretty. There's a lot of work. Probably get new bottom skins for those and put on them. And it'll depend on how much damage there is inside with the stringers and the formers and stuff inside. This float over here, the left one, is just as bad or worse. There's a chine here. It's lifted up, blistered up all over the place there. That's just almost gone. A good bet that that skin underneath it is bad too. Same thing over on that side. The skeg is not quite as bad. The keel there is not too bad. It's wore out back here over the skeg, but that's not too much to worry about there. But this aft body here is not as bad as the right float is. There's corrosion starting pretty good all along that seam there on that chine. And this rear section of the keel is starting to corrode there. Well, anyway, that's what I looked at a couple of years ago, and I looked at maybe doing some repairs on this. I looked underneath the bottom of the floats, and when I saw what I looked at there, I just turned them back over and said, time to figure out something else. Pretty good cancer there. That'd take some full radiation and chemo. A lot of work repairing those. I've done it before, so I know.